Good evening, everybody. Today I'd like to talk about self-defense and fear and how that works in our court system. Mostly because recently there's a case of George Zimmerman versus Trayvon Martin where Mr. Zimmerman killed Trayvon in an altercation in 2011 where I guess Mr. Zimmerman was a neighborhood watch volunteer who had a firearm, and he followed Mr. Martin, and they got in an altercation, and Mr. Martin ended up dead. He was found acquitted of homicide recently, about 3 days ago, 4 days, 5, this week. I'm sorry. He was found acquitted of charges based on a law called Stand Your Ground. Now, this acquittal has caused a lot of backlash on the Stand Your Ground law, and because of racism in the legal system and this sort of macro legal conspiracy against black people. And I'd like to say first and foremost that I don't find Zimmerman innocent of wrongdoing. That would be stupid. He followed the person, he followed Martin, and they did get an altercation. He should not have done most of what he did. But I do find him innocent within the confines of the evidence provided in the case. And what that more or less is saying is that regardless of what he did, the prosecution did not have enough evidence to convict him of such. That's why initially the investigators in Florida chose not to charge him. There was no witnesses, there was no clear motive, there was no concrete evidence, there was none of the hallmark things you would use to prove someone of homicide beyond reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt being a very important thing here. A lot of people are saying, oh, well, he shot him because he was black, because he wanted to be a cop, because of a lot of weird stuff, but all of that, most of the case was hearsay and character witness. So, that being said, oh, and by the way, Eric Holder, you should not have come out with a political stance against Zimmerman. The fact that you claimed Florida should charge him, regardless of the evidence they had gathered, is one of the most unprofessional things I've seen a federal attorney general do ever. Which is impressive because the Justice Department can have hard days. Anyways, Stand Your Ground law is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. Bill Maher recently tweeted that, and so we should just change the Stand Your Ground law to just the get-out-of-jail-free card law. And that is grossly incorrect. What the Stand Your Ground law more or less says is that when you have an altercation with an aggressor and you are in an clearly articulated fear for your safety, you don't have to use the option to run away first. And if you don't run away and you actually fight back, you can't be prosecuted because you didn't run away. You still have to articulate fear for your safety. You can't instigate that kind of conflict. You cannot, as the media is saying now, start a fight, lose the upper hand, and kill someone and get away with it. This is not Boondock Saints. This is not 15 minutes where people sort of film their homicide but then just say they're crazy because they're crazy. It's insane to think that you can't just start fights and kill people. That is not what the law does. It protects you from having to run away as opposed to defending yourself in a concrete way. That's it. So, I mentioned fear for your safety and clearly articulated fear for your safety. That is a very touchy thing, which it does have to be proven always. Otherwise, you just killed someone for basically no reason. Say, for instance, now Arizona also has castle doctrine and Stand Your Ground laws. Say, for instance, someone has broken into your house. You can say, if they come at you with a knife or gun or anything like that, you can say that you fear for your safety and shoot this person inside your house. The second that They grab your DVD player and turn away. You cannot shoot this person, regardless of them being in your house, because they have shown the motive is to take your possessions and not to take your well-being. That is extremely important here. You can't just shoot people just because they're in your house. You can't just shoot people because you're afraid. You have to articulate fear for your safety. And I guess Mr. Zimmerman here was able to articulate that, at least in the sense that he was not proven otherwise. Stand your ground laws matter to anyone who has Second Amendment beliefs, because why be allowed to carry guns for self-defense if you have to turn away and run first? It matters for anyone who believes in self-defense whatsoever. You cannot let the law dictate whether or not you have to run away first. If the entirety of prosecutors are able to just say avoid everything, it turns the blame and the burden of proof onto the victim, which is legally abhorrent at best. That's turning the victims into also legal victims. They are perpetually given the lower hand in every single situation, where the aggressor will be coming at them. They'll be coming at them with weapons. They'll be denigrating their safety, and the victim themselves have to run away first or risk their lives, turn away, get hit by a brick, get shot, get stabbed in the back. They have to run away first before acting like they should have fought in the first place. But if they did, then they would be convicted. And that is wrong. Now, there's also this claim of Zimmerman being racist, which it apparently has been articulated that he was. But convictable racism is very, very different from racism in and of itself. And what I mean by that is he did articulate that fear for his safety, and his social construct of racism could have augmented that fear to where he was more afraid of a black person. But to be convicted of racist intent implies that you assaulted that person or killed that person specifically because they were that race and with implicit intent to oppress that race. It's not based on whether or not you were racist in and of itself. So, yeah, people should be mad that people in the South are still racist. But that does not mean that Trayvon was killed just because he's black. That doesn't mean Al Sharpton is right. That doesn't mean this media circuit of revenge porn should be allowed to keep on going. Civilians are held to a higher standard than police, and for very particular reasons in regards to force and self-defense, where violence in a police matter is regards to seizure, while self-defense is saving yourself in a matter of life and death. It's not a extra legal conspiracy in this case, not an extra legal conspiracy against black people or minorities in general. Now, he may have had that fear augmented because of his racism. That could very well be true. But that does not make it a hate crime, and he cannot be prosecuted, especially at the federal level, because of it. And there's riots going on that are about how the legal system is now destroying minorities and destroying black people. LA has people walking around on the freeway like somehow Rodney King's verdict has come back to haunt them and they're just the place to riot. But racism in the legal system is more of a macroeconomic effect that unfortunately has a disparate effect on minorities and therefore a disparate effect on crime within minorities, versus the implicit intent of the justice system to go against those minorities because they are. And that's definitely a subject for another time. But Point being, this wasn't a hate crime, and the stand your ground law is very, very important for self-defense. Not because it's a get out of jail free card, because a get out of death card. Do you really want the aggressor to dictate whether or not you need to run away or not? That's the question. So, I guess I will figure out a way to close really quick because I've gotten really long here. But I will end with this, and it's going to be a note on the case itself, is there was a very low amount of evidence. Now, he may have been guilty, but do we really want the social media and the actual media to possibly convict an innocent person of a homicide? Or do we want a guilty person just to be convicted with no evidence just because we think so? It's a huge risk. Ask the Innocence Project. They're all over the place. People with life sentences with bad evidence because of inflammatory rhetoric or small-town racism or bias. You want to talk about minorities getting disparate effects? Ask an Innocence Project about that. So, if anything, this case has proven that the justice system sometimes can still survive and still show that a lack of evidence doesn't get people convicted of crimes they may not have done just because of inflammatory rhetoric. And it has not set a precedent that we are allowed to kill people just because we lose a fight. What it has said is that on very rare occasion, the justice system may kind of still work sometimes. And we cannot ruin our self-defense rights, and we cannot accuse the entire planet of racism just because sometimes things don't go our way. So, I'm gonna shut this down now, and I've probably rambled my way into idiocy by now. But that's all I got to say. Good night.